Hello and welcome to another Louisburgh Community TV video. Welcome to Tertulia,
a bookshop like no other.
Coming to you from our old school house in Ohoney once again this week. Today we have two authors with us. We have Henrietta McKervey, whose fourth book, The Talented Man, has just come out, so we look forward to getting a copy in the bookshop when we can order again. So Gloss magazine describes Henrietta as having wit, imagination and an understanding of human beings. She writes the stories about who we are, so we're really looking forward to seeing her book and listening to her read. Next up then after that we have Lukasz. Lukasz Krzywon is our in-house resident philosopher, we'll call him. He just hosted an evening before we closed on The Beautiful Coincidence. It was a really lovely evening. Today he's going to read from The Frog and Toad, and he has his son with him on the video. It's really lovely edited video, and you'll see him in a few minutes. So
great. Over to Henrietta.
Hello, my name is Henrietta McKervey and this is my new book, A Talented Man. Thank you very much to Tertulia TV and Louisburgh Community Based TV for asking me to talk to you about it and to read a little bit from the book. It is the story of a master forger in 1938 who discovers a lost sequel to Dracula. I'm just going to read a little excerpt from the start. Ellis Spender glanced over his shoulder. The man was still there. He had first noticed the heavy-set figure, belted navy overcoat, hat pulled down low over his eyes, on Hampstead Lane, and thought little of it. Yet there he was again, a constant 5 yards behind as Ellis turned right onto the Grove. The streets were quiet and gloomy, a fine soot mist hovering low, blurring the air around him. Would the shadow break off if he crossed the road towards Highgate Hill? Ellis turned a corner. It stuck. Yes, he was definitely being followed. Sweat stung his neck despite the near-freezing January night. He paused outside the Golden Lamb. Rainbow-coloured circles of light clung to the lamp over the door. It took a moment to adjust to the brightness, the rush of smoke. A barmaid gave him the eye, but looked away, coy and blushing, when he met her gaze. Gin and French. He rattled coins to disguise the nervous shake in his hand. Evening, lad. An old sot leaning against the bar counter half raised his glass in greeting. His slack-mouthed grin exposed greyish gums. Don't suppose you got a ciggy? He slurred. His tongue pushed the single tooth in his lower jaw forward till it leant, pitted and filthy, against his lip. No. Revolted by the perversity of the gesture, Ellis moved down the counter. He looked at the mirror-backed shelves that lined the wall behind the bar. His own distorted reflection stared back through the clutter of bottles, cigarettes and stacked glasses that zigzagged halfway to the ceiling. He took off his hat and ran a hand over his hair. Blonde waves flowed under his palm like water slipping under a bridge. There he was, sitting alone, no more than 20 feet away. Ellis stared hard, willing the slivers of mirror to explain what was happening. The stranger was frowning, his lips folded in on themselves. Ellis was aware of the tremor in his hand again, a nervy tug up his arm into his shoulder. He couldn't possibly be from the Prudential, could he? Surely that was long since over. Virginia had refunded the money paid out on Ellis's claim, fraudulently submitted according to the assessors, but what would those chumps know? The only other person who knew about that ghastly business was Uncle Freddie, but he was, thankfully, in America. Perhaps the man had been hired by a creditor. Was this how it happened? Arrested over a trifling sum? Ellis swallowed hard. How he hated the constant sensation that life was fracturing under his feet, cracking, collapsing. Any minute the ice was going to break and his body would plummet through the hole into a bottomless, freezing lake. What next? If he went straight home and was followed, the man would know where he lived. But perhaps he already did, had trailed him from the house, in fact, and was playing this cat-and-mouse game to taunt him. Excuse me? The man was beside him, one hand fumbling in his pocket. A knife! Ellis's fear, a vast foaming breaker, rose again. Every pointless moment in his life, every second of greed or avarice pricked him. Regret was blood-red and pin-sharp. The man tugged a balled-up handkerchief from his pocket and blew his nose loudly. A knife? Where was he, the Odeon? Ellis flushed, embarrassed by the intensity of his private melodrama. You are Ellis Spender, aren't you? For a moment Ellis was about to deny it. How could the stranger prove anything? But if he was a policeman, would Ellis be in more trouble for denying it? Was denying your own self a crime? Thank you.
Thanks, Henrietta. We're looking forward to getting that book into the shop. Now Neil's going to do a roundup of the books we have had in case you missed any of our other videos.
First of all, in week 1, we had Effna Shortall, who this is her 3rd book, Three Little Truths, and it's a lovely book. Effna came into the bookshop and read and told us all about her book.
And the video is her showing us around where she writes and her inspiration.
And we also had Jane Souter in, who produced this book, Reimagining Democracy, and Jane helped set up the Citizens Assembly, and she also came into the bookshop and gave a talk about her book.
And we're looking forward to having her back in the shop sometime soon.
We also had Anne Griffin, who wrote this book, When All Is Said, and Anne read from her book, which is absolutely lovely.
And it's based on an interaction she had with someone in a Newport hotel, so there's a Mayo connection there.
And then 2 weeks ago, we had Ruth Gilligan in, who read from her book, The Butchers. Breed's nearly
partway through.
Yeah, and Ruth's absolutely lovely. So that's a book, good book to have. And then last week, we had Rachel English in, who read from her book, The Paper Bracelet.
And yeah, we know Rachel from TV. She's a presenter from Morning Ireland, and she reads from her book. So check that one out. It's really excellent.
And last week as well, last of all, we had Shane Peggotty in, who read from The Boot, which is a book that for children, but I'm going to be reading it because it just sounds so brilliant.
Yeah, it does. Next up, we're going to have me talking about philosophy. So we're developing something called bite-sized philosophy bits, where I've developed 3 questions, which I will be asking different interviewees over the next few weeks. And today Neil is going to ask me those 3 questions, if he can remember them.
Okay, what is philosophy, Breed?
So what is philosophy? So for me, it's 3 things. It's a way of thinking, and it's when we focus on thinking. We all have thoughts, but it's what we do with those thoughts. And secondly, it's a structured way of thinking. It's a model of thinking. So it's built around scientific evidence, around exploring what the truth really is. So it's a model, it's a structure of thinking. And the third thing is that it's for the collective good. So it's a way of thinking, it's a model of thinking, what you do with those thoughts, and it's for the collective good. It's for changing the world to be better than what it was before.
Okay, well, why bother with philosophy, Breed?
Yeah, good question. I have a piece here from Matthew White, an academic who wrote an article about Enlightenment philosophers. And this is from the era from late 1600s to early 1800s. And he reckoned it was a time of rigorous scientific and philosophical discourse, where centuries of custom and tradition were brushed aside in favour of explorations, individualism, tolerance and scientific endeavour, which in tandem with politics and industry witnessed the emergence of the modern world. So I like that explanation. I believe that the way we think today influences tomorrow, and that the way we think today was formed a lot from those Enlightenment philosophers. And today, the fact that we're staying at home, who would have thought 4 months ago that we would say, right, there's something not working in the world, so let's just kind of shut it down for a while and we'll see what happens. And that's really what has happened here. So it's radical really in what's happening, and it's a good time to think philosophy does actually matter.
Okay, Breed, that's great. And who's your favourite philosopher?
Right, he's my favourite philosopher. I did a master's in philosophy, well, as you know, Neil, a few years ago, and it was in peace studies. So we didn't get to study the great philosophers per se. It was more about philosophical thinking. But on the free days that I had to go into the Trinity Library, I could immerse myself in the many, many books on the shelves, which were just amazing. And the library is so beautiful itself. I just absolutely loved it. And I tried desperately to ingest all of the philosophers and who might be my favourite one and what they all thought, but I just couldn't. There was just so many. But what it did do was encourage me to continue with that curiosity, which I have done. And this is what the bookshop is about also. Back to the bookshop. One of the books I am reading is about a philosopher called Diderot and the Art of Thinking Freely. This was recommended by one of our lovely customers, Paddy, and I am partway through this too. He's amazing. He's from that Enlightenment time, from the early 1700s, and he got a lot of persecution, he was thrown in prison, he was locked up in a convent. But what I love about him is he challenged everything. He challenged what he called received ideas, that we we have to challenge that, and there's no such thing as absolutism. There's no such thing as one absolute way of doing things. So now at the moment he's my favourite one today, but it might be different next week.
Hello everyone, welcome to episode number 3. Today we're gonna explore another story from this book. And later obviously it's time for Today's book is Frog and Toad by Arnold Lobel. Dragons and Giants. Frog and Toad were reading a book together. "The people in this book are brave," said Toad. "They fight dragons and giants and they are never afraid." "I wonder if we are brave," said Frog. Frog and Toad look into a mirror. "We look brave." "But are we?" asked Toad. Frog and Toad went outside. "We can try to climb this mountain," said Frog. "That should tell us if we're brave." Frog went leaping over rocks, and Toad came puffing up behind him. They came to a dark cave. A big snake came out of the cave. "Hello, lunch," said the snake when he saw Frog and Toad. He opened his wide mouth. Frog and Toad jumped away. Toad was shaking. "I am not afraid," he cried. They climbed higher, and they heard a loud noise. Many large stones were rolling down the mountain. "It's an avalanche!" cried Toad. Frog and Toad jumped away. Frog was trembling. "I am not afraid," he shouted. They came to the top of the mountain. The shadow of a hawk fell over them. Frog and Toad jumped under the rock. A hawk flew away. "We are not afraid!" screamed Frog and Toad at the same time. Then they ran down the mountain very fast. They ran past the place where they saw the avalanche. They ran past the place where they saw the snake. And they ran all the way to Toad's house. "Frog, I'm glad to have a brave friend like you," said Toad. He jumped into the bed and pulled the covers over his head. "And I am happy to know a brave person like you, Toad," said Frog. He jumped into the wardrobe and shut the door. Toad stayed in the bed and Frog stayed in the wardrobe. They stayed there for a long time, just feeling very brave together. The end. It's time for
the questions!
Earl of Nasty. Mateusz, do you think Frog and Toad were brave?
Nope.
No? Why?
Well, they ran away from their quests.
But they did go on an adventure.
True.
They did face the snake and the avalanche. So were they brave or not?
Mm, 30% one side, 30% other side.
And what's with the 40% missing?
40% goes into the snake.
So, today's question is all about being brave. Do you think Toad and Frog were brave? Do you think we always need to be brave? Are there any things in life, any situations in life, and we better not be brave and not do something? And what would Frog and Toad say about this? I'm wondering. Who is braver? Is braver a person who is afraid and is doing something? Or is someone who's not afraid and doing something braver than the other one? Welcome everyone, it's us again, me and Mateusz, and we're going to show you a bucket full of ideas. Okay, so I'm going to take some ideas out of this bucket.
Empty bucket for now.
No, it's not an empty bucket, it's full of ideas. Can you see that? Okay, and Mateusz will have to encourage me to get something else out of the bucket. And you can try this at home. Yes, do try this at home. It's a hat.
Fantastic.
It's a frog.
Slimy.
A ball.
Bouncy. Boing boing.
A pen. A book.
Rightastic.
What's that? Star.
Shiny.
You get the idea?
Yep.
One person have to encourage the other to take something out. But now, yes,
You
Oliver.
know the bucket is actually empty. My brother's right.
Yeah, right.
Okay, so we're going to try to take some big ideas this time, something you cannot really see or feel. Maybe you can feel, maybe you can think of it, but they're not objects. Okay, Mateusz, what do we have in this
Air.
bucket? Air.
Love.
Love.
Energy.
Energy. Woo!
Sound.
Sound.
Breath.
Breath.
Smell.
Smell, breath, and air.
Emotions.
Emotions. Wow. Or Mr. Tomato.
If you are beautiful like me, and not ugly like a toad or a frog, leave a like, subscribe, leave a few comments maybe in the comment section, and don't forget to explore any topics you want. Unicorn out.
We also have next week Brian O'Connell coming on. He's going to talk about his book, The Personnels, the human stories behind the small ads. Brian came into the bookshop last year and read from his stories, and it was brilliant. Absolutely lovely evening. And we're also going to be having Sarah Churchwell, who I met at the Dublin History Festival last year. She's going to be talking about Behold America, and I think he's going to ask us some questions on philosophy.
Hope so. Okay, that's it.
Okay, thank you very much, everybody.
And we'll talk to you next week.
Bye-bye.